Life often teaches us profound lessons about compassion, morality, and the consequences of our actions. In the world we share with countless living beings, every choice we make leaves an imprint, shaping not only our lives, but also the lives of those around us, human or otherwise. Stories of karmic retribution, like the one you're about to hear, serve as powerful reminders of the interconnectedness of all beings and the inescapable nature of cause and effect. Today, we'll explore a tale that delves deep into the heart of this truth. It is a story of transformation, remorse, and the awakening of empathy in the face of suffering. Through this narrative, we are reminded of a timeless lesson: to live with kindness, to respect the sanctity of life, and to be mindful of the consequences that our actions inevitably bring. The story, The Ants and the House. A couple brought their teenage son to visit Master Dufap, seeking his guidance. 3 years ago, the family had moved abroad from Taiwan. At first, they rented a small apartment, intending to find a suitable villa to purchase later. However, their house hunting efforts seemed doomed to fail. Whenever the husband liked a house, the wife disapproved. If the wife found one she liked, the husband objected. On rare occasions, their son would agree on a property, only to have his parents disagree. Even when all three aligned, they faced another obstacle. The seller would suddenly refuse to sell. And so, this frustrating cycle persisted for 3 years. They were left baffled, unable to understand why finding a house had become so difficult. As devout Buddhists, they began to suspect that their misfortune might be the result of their own lack of merit. During a vacation, they decided to visit Wutai Mountain in mainland China to pay respects to the Buddha and seek enlightenment from Master Dufap. After patiently listening to their story, the master smiled gently and asked the two boys, "Have you ever enjoyed playing with or disturbing ant colonies?" The whole family laughed. The mother replied, "Yes, Master. When they were younger, the boys loved to disturb ant nests. They called it researching the ants' homes. They'd marvel at how the nests were designed, with royal chambers for the queen, barracks for the worker ants, and plenty of stored food supplies. They were so fascinated they'd forget to eat or rest." The master's expression grew serious as he explained, "Unintentional actions, such as destroying ant nests, have a significant impact on the lives of these tiny creatures. This reminds us that every action has consequences, and we should act with compassion and respect for all living beings. Now, you find yourselves without a permanent home, wandering from place to place. This is the karmic result of those actions. If you don't sincerely repent and change, the karmic consequences may deepen. Even if you find a home, it may face unforeseen damage or destruction in the future. And no matter how wealthy you may become, you could one day find yourself struggling to secure even the basics, such as food." Turning to the parents, the master continued, "And you too, as their parents, have been disciples of the Buddha for many years. How could you stand by and allow your children to act in ways that harm living beings? As parents, it is your responsibility to guide them. You must understand that karma is as inseparable from its cause as a shadow is from the body. If your family sincerely repents, creates merit, and dedicates blessings to the ants, you may yet change the course of your future. Do you understand?" Moved to tears, the couple bowed and said, "Master, we realize our mistake. We thought that being vegetarians and chanting the Buddha's name was enough. We never considered the gravity of our past actions. When we return, our whole family will repent before the Buddha and recite the Earth Store Sutra and the Great Compassion Mantra to dedicate merit to the ants. Will that be sufficient?" "Excellent, excellent," the master exclaimed. "You must always remember this. All living beings have the potential to become Buddhas. Never look down on any creature, and never harm sentient beings carelessly." The master's words left a profound impression on the family, who returned home with a renewed sense of compassion and resolve to live more mindful, virtuous lives. The story, "You reap what you sow." My neighbor, Mr. Truong, was an enthusiast of Qigong and even practiced it to treat illnesses for others. Yet, despite his efforts to heal others, he was suffering from a persistent dizziness that had plagued him for 3 to 4 years. No medication or treatment seemed to work. Describing his condition, he said, "My head feels like I've just downed 2 bottles of wine. It's constantly spinning." One day, Mr. Truong had the chance to meet Master Ju Fap and earnestly begged him to use Qigong to cure his ailment. The master smiled kindly and replied, "I cannot use Qigong to heal your condition. Every illness has a cause. However, I can tell you the root of your dizziness. Whether it gets better depends on you." As the Buddha taught, fate is shaped by oneself. Perhaps in ignorance, you have done something wrong that brought suffering to yourself and others. If you meet a wise teacher who helps you see the cause of your troubles, and you sincerely recognize and correct your mistake, then your suffering will naturally dissipate. The teachings of the Buddha are not about blind faith in Buddhas, bodhisattvas, or monks. Instead, they empower each person with wisdom, enabling them to transform their own destiny. Mr. Truong pondered this for a moment, then nodded in agreement. The master continued, "Your dizziness stems from an incident 3 or 4 years ago when you harmed a nest of baby mice. Do you recall such an event?" After reflecting, Mr. Truong admitted, "Yes, Master, I remember. Your insight is remarkable. About 3 years ago, I went into my storage room and found a nest of 6 or 7 baby mice. I was afraid, so I put them in a cage and shook it for a while and then threw them into the trash. Could this incident really be connected to my dizziness?" The master explained, "Yes, the baby mice were still alive from your shaking but were left severely disoriented. What you sow, you shall reap. This is the cause of your dizziness." Stunned, Mr. Truong muttered, "That's true. I started feeling dizzy not long after that incident. Thank goodness the mice didn't die. If they had, I can't imagine what consequences I'd be facing now." The master nodded solemnly. Indeed, taking lives shortens one's own lifespan. Even if it doesn't, misfortune or unexpected calamities will follow in this life. Animals that suffer death are often repaying karmic debts from their past lives. For us, taking their lives means incurring new karmic debts that must be repaid. This cycle of cause and effect, killing and being killed, creates an endless loop of suffering. That's why ordinary beings remain trapped in the cycle of rebirth, unable to escape. Only by understanding the Dharma, believing deeply in cause and effect, ceasing harm, and cultivating goodness can we transcend this ocean of suffering. Tell me, from now on, do you still intend to harm living beings?" Shaken, Mr. Truong replied, "Never again. Master, I will never take life another living being." As he spoke, his face lit up with joy, and he exclaimed, "Master, my dizziness is gone. My head feels completely clear." Those nearby chuckled with delight at his sudden recovery. Still curious, Mr. Truong asked, "But Master, mice are pests. They damage property and can even spread diseases like the plague. If we don't control them, won't they overpopulate and cause more harm?" The master explained patiently, "All life, from the vast universe to the tiniest speck of dust, follows natural laws of creation, sustenance, decay, and dissolution, just as humans undergo birth, aging, sickness, and death. All things have a life cycle. Mountains, rivers, forests, and animals, all are subject to these cycles. If we disregard these natural laws and act out of ignorance or self-interest, we invite unimaginable consequences. For example, when we destroy forests or exploit nature for immediate gain, we trigger landslides, floods, and climate change. Similarly, the natural predators of mice, snakes, cats, hawks, and owls are often hunted or driven to extinction by humans. As the saying goes, natural disasters are born of human actions. After a pause, the master added, "I can teach you a method to address your mouse problem without harming them. Would you like to try?" Everyone listened intently as the master continued. "First, understand that mice are sentient beings. They have mothers who give birth to and nurture them, just like other animals such as cows, horses, cats, and dogs. Some animals even understand human speech. When you have truly embraced the principle of non-harm, you can prepare leftover food each day and place it where the mice often appear. As you do, softly say, "In the past, I was ignorant of the Buddha's teachings and harmed many mice. Now I have realized my mistakes and vow never to harm living beings again. I will recite sutras and dedicate merit to the mice I've harmed. I hope you will not damage property in my home." If you do this with sincerity and a pure heart, you will see results. In time, the mice may even leave your home entirely. The master's words opened our eyes and ears to a new way of thinking. Later, we tried this method, and it worked remarkably well. Some families with ant infestations even applied the same approach and found it equally effective. Don't believe me? Then go ahead and try it for yourself. The story, Cutting Corners Brings Collapse. In the world of construction, there are 3 well-known sayings. Cut corners, but don't skimp on materials. It'll collapse eventually. Skimp on materials, but don't cut corners. It'll collapse too. Cut corners and skimp on materials. Collapse is guaranteed. To put it simply, cutting corners and skimping on materials inevitably leads to disaster. In 1971, in the city of Tainan, Taiwan, there was a renowned construction businessman named Truong Luong. Though uneducated, his buildings were remarkably sturdy. He never cut corners or skimped on materials, always ensuring quality and integrity in his projects. Because of his reputation, both private and government clients sought him out to oversee their construction projects. Truong Luong had 2 sons. His eldest, Truong Sung, was an architectural engineer, while his younger son, Truong Koan, inherited his father's business. At that time, the government planned to build a large apartment complex in a rural area, a massive project that attracted fierce competition from both legal and underground factions vying for the contract. Thanks to Truong Luong's stellar reputation, local officials recommended him for the job. Among these officials was a man named Chiem Tan, a self-made bureaucrat who had risen through the ranks due to his academic excellence. Unfortunately, he lacked moral integrity and had become corrupt. He was known for bribery, deceit, and using his position for personal gain. When Chiem Tan learned that Truong Sung had signed the contract to design the project, he visited him late at night, accompanied by several legislators and gang members. They pressured him, claiming that many had worked behind the scenes to secure the contract and demanded a referral fee in return. Fearing for his safety, Truong Sung reluctantly agreed. Later, Chiem Tan turned his attention to Truong Koan, the project manager. He demanded protection fees and insisted on awarding subcontracting rights to his own affiliates, threatening dire consequences if denied. Given the project's slim profit margin, these relentless demands left Truong Koan with no choice but to comply. This allowed Chiem Tan to exploit the situation, cutting corners and using subpar materials. He even bribed inspectors to pass fraudulent reports. Confident in his scheme, he believed no one would uncover the truth. But fate had other plans. The following year, after the building was completed, Tainan was struck by severe storms and floods. The apartment complex couldn't withstand the battering and collapsed within hours, sending debris flying in all directions. This tragedy unfolded just as high-ranking officials were visiting the area to assess the disaster's impact. Witnessing the collapse firsthand, they ordered an immediate investigation. Desperate to avoid accountability, Chiem Tan shifted the blame onto Truong Sung and Truong Koan. However, Truong Sung, knowing he couldn't escape responsibility, secretly paid a legislator to intervene on his behalf and emerged unscathed. Truong Koan, on the other hand, was honest and refused to bribe anyone. As a result, he was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison. The news devastated Truong Luong, who was already bedridden. Watching his lifelong reputation crumble in a single moment, he couldn't bear the shame and took his own life. Afterward, Truong Sung maintained his partnership with Chiem Tan's cousin, Chiem Kan, a construction businessman. Recognizing Chiem Kan's dissatisfaction with Chiem Tan's extortionate demands, Truong Sung proposed a partnership. He would award contracts to Chiem Kan without taking any kickbacks. Delighted by the fair deal, Chiem Kan readily agreed. When Chiem Tan discovered this betrayal, he was furious. That night, he gathered 6 gang members and went to confront Truong Sung. Unbeknownst to him, the authorities had set up a sting operation and arrested the entire group. As a result, Chiam-Tana's notorious career ended in disgrace. He was not only dismissed from his position, but also convicted of conspiracy to commit murder, receiving a sentence of 1.5 years in prison. Upon his release, Chiam-Tan resumed his corrupt practices, opening a construction company that continued to cut corners and use substandard materials. While he evaded legal consequences through bribery, his reputation continued to decline. Fate finally caught up with him on his 65th birthday. His two sons had pooled their resources to build a luxurious villa as a birthday gift. That evening, the family moved in and celebrated with joy. But that very night, the villa's foundation began to sink, and the entire structure collapsed. In an unfortunate accident, Mr. Chiam-Tana's villa suffered significant damage. This serves as a powerful reminder that dishonesty and cutting corners in construction can lead to unforeseen consequences. Investigations revealed that the villa had been built using substandard materials, a hallmark of Chiam-Tana's construction methods. Ironically, the workers who built the villa were from his eldest son's company, which had inherited his expertise in cutting corners. The very practices he had passed down ultimately led to his demise. This grim tale is a vivid example of the saying, "You reap what you sow." Today, many officials and construction companies sacrifice integrity for wealth and power, leading to disasters that claim countless lives. Events like the 1992 Taiwan earthquake and the catastrophic collapses in Sichuan during major quakes remind us of the tragic consequences of corruption and negligence. Let this true story be a lesson. Wealth gained through dishonesty comes at a great cost. Harming others ultimately harms yourself, and no one escapes the karmic consequences of their actions. The story, the mysterious case of the judge. One morning in July 1978, in the highlands of Taipei County, a couple, Mr. Avong and his wife, along with their close friend Lamexe, decided to head into the mountains to pick lychees. As they walked past an old, abandoned cave, they were startled by the sight of 3 dogs running out, carrying what appeared to be human remains. Drops of blood trailed behind them. Overcome by curiosity, Lamexe cautiously entered the cave to investigate. What he saw left him speechless. Lying on the ground was an elderly man, seemingly in his 60s, unconscious and showing signs of severe internal injuries. Near him sat a disheveled girl, her demeanor unsettlingly calm as she played with objects scattered around the scene. The dogs that had just fled the cave appeared to have been involved in the attack. Shocked and frightened, Lamexe ran out of the cave and informed the Avon couple. Together, they reported to the local authorities. When the police arrived at the scene, they discovered that the victim had suffered grave internal injuries, though no external wounds were visible. Oddly, the girl, later identified as his daughter, remained unharmed. This raised numerous questions. Why had the dogs only targeted the man? What role, if any, did the girl play in the incident? Through their investigation, the police identified the victim as Mr. Luduk, a retired judge. His daughter, Lu Tutu, was found to be suffering from a severe mental illness. They lived in a nearby town called Dolam. Delving deeper, the police uncovered a troubling history behind Mr. Luduk. Born in mainland China, he had moved to Taiwan in 1949 as part of the nationalist government. For 28 years, he served as a judge, a position that requires integrity and impartiality. However, records revealed a man who frequently abused his authority for personal gain. One notorious case occurred in 1953, involving a customs officer named Ngu Don who had been convicted of embezzlement and sentenced to 10 years in prison. When the case was appealed, it came under Judge Luduk's jurisdiction. At the trial, the judge became captivated by the beauty of Ngu Don's partner, Fan Chao, who attended the proceedings. Luduk made it clear that he held the power to either extend or reduce Ngu Don's sentence. Behind closed doors, he hinted to Ngu Don's lawyer that if Fan Chao were willing to plead for mercy, the outcome could change. Succumbing to pressure, the lawyer arranged a private meeting, where Luduk made inappropriate demands. Ultimately, after securing both personal benefits and a large sum of money from Ngu Don's family, Lu Duk reduced the sentence to 6 months, allowing it to be paid off with a fine. Such instances were not isolated. During his tenure, Lu Duk amassed great wealth through bribery and corruption. His actions destroyed countless lives, with many families left broken due to unjust rulings. Despite his public position, he pursued personal interests at the expense of those he was meant to serve. Lu Duk married a woman named Tui Dao, who was 13 years younger than him and known for her gentle and kind nature. They had a daughter, Lu Tutu. Tragically, when Tutu was just 2 years old, Tui Dao passed away after a battle with illness. The loss of her mother deeply affected the family, leaving Lu Duk to care for his young daughter alone. Due to his demanding work and focus on personal gain, Lu Duk neglected his parental responsibilities. When Tutu fell seriously ill with a high fever, she did not receive timely medical attention, leading to lasting complications that affected her mental development. This incident marked a turning point in their lives. But rather than reflecting on his role in his daughter's condition, Lu Duk continued to prioritize his career and personal interests. Over the years, his corruption grew, as did his reputation for abusing power. In 1977, Mr. Lu Duk finally retired and settled in the highlands of Tho Lam town with a widowed woman and his own daughter Lu Tutu. On the morning of the incident, they entered the abandoned cave during a walk. Suddenly, 3 ferocious dogs attacked him, leaving him fatally injured. The attack seemed deliberate and targeted, while Lu Tutu remained untouched. Witnesses later described her sitting calmly next to her father, obliviously playing with objects near the scene. Some viewed this tragic incident as an act of karmic justice. Despite evading legal consequences during his lifetime, Lu Duk could not escape the moral reckoning for his actions. This story serves as a cautionary tale. The consequences of one's deeds, whether good or bad, are inescapable. As the saying goes, though the wheels of justice turn slowly, they grind exceedingly fine. The story, Human Traffickers. In 1981, after China's liberation, many industries began to flourish. In a remote village called Tahao in Lunan Province, most residents made their living growing and selling medicinal herbs. This earned the area the nickname Herbal Village. Renowned across the nation, merchants from large cities often traveled to Tahao to purchase traditional Chinese medicine ingredients. Among the villagers was a young woman named Han Ha, whose parents also worked in herb farming. At just 17 years old, Han Ha was known for her straightforward nature. She noticed how merchants frequently deceived the villagers by undervaluing their herbs. Determined to help, she encouraged the villagers to unite and negotiate fair prices. Representing the entire village, Han Ha successfully advocated for higher, more reasonable rates. Her efforts earned the villagers' gratitude and admiration. One day, a wealthy merchant from Shanghai named Du Engu came to the village and was impressed by Han Ha's leadership skills. He believed that with proper training, she could help him make significant profits. Du Engu offered Han Ha a lucrative job in Shanghai, promising a high salary and a prestigious position. Despite her reluctance to leave her aging parents and her disabled brother behind, Han Ha felt the weight of her family's financial struggles. After much thought, she accepted the offer, hoping it would improve their lives. In Taiwan, traditional Chinese medicine was in high demand. Merchants like Tran Tan, who owned a herbal medicine shop, often traveled to mainland China to purchase herbs. Tran Tan's younger brother, Q Tan, ran a marriage agency that specialized in arranging marriages between Taiwanese men and women from mainland China or Southeast Asia. Using his connections with his brother, Q Tan frequently accompanied clients to mainland China to find potential brides. In November 1981, 2 men named La Bang and Vang Nia approached Q Tan's agency. Both appear to be in their 30s, presenting themselves as successful and respectable gentlemen. They claimed they were looking for wives and offered to pay a high service fee. Enthusiastic, Q Tan assured them he would help fulfill their wishes. 3 months later, Q Tan escorted La Bang and Vang Nia to Shanghai, where they stayed at Du Engu's villa. That evening, Du Engu hosted a lavish dinner, attended by Han Ha and another young woman, Vang Hon, who worked as a server. During the meal, Labang introduced himself as the CEO of an electronics company with 3 branches and over 200 employees. He explained that his busy work schedule had led to the breakdown of his previous marriage and that he was now seeking a kind, intelligent wife to support his career. Similarly, Vong Nia claimed to be the owner of a construction company, traveling frequently across Taiwan to oversee projects. He, too, attributed his divorce to his demanding job and expressed his desire for a compassionate and understanding partner. The 2 men painted an appealing picture of their lives, which captivated Han Ha, a young woman from a modest background. She was drawn to the idea of marrying a successful man who could provide financial security and a better future. She began to imagine a life of comfort and prestige as the wife of a wealthy businessman. Encouraged by Duan Gu and Hu Tan, arrangements were made for Han Ha to marry Vong Nia and for Vong Hon to marry Labang. Both women, dreaming of a brighter future, agreed to the proposal. However, upon arriving in Taiwan, the women's hopes were shattered. At the airport, they were intercepted by members of gang and taken to a hotel in Taoyuan. Their passports were confiscated, and they were effectively held captive. It was then that Han Ha and Vong Hon realized they had fallen into a trap. The next day, Labang, Vong Nia, and the gang's leader, Lam, visited the women. They threatened them, warning that any attempt to escape or contact the police would endanger their families back in China. To emphasize their power, Lam showed the women photos of their families and described their homes in chilling detail. Fearing for her life and her family's safety, Han Ha reluctantly complied with their demands, waiting for an opportunity to escape. Vong Hon, unable to accept the harsh reality, broke down in despair. Her protests were met with cruelty, as Lam separated her from Han Ha for his own ulterior motives. Both women endured immense suffering. Over time, Vong Hon's physical and emotional health deteriorated. After a police raid rescued her, she was sent back to China, but not without lasting consequences. She had contracted an illness that left her infertile. Han Ha's plight was equally tragic. Forced into exploitative work, she was also coerced into using harmful substances. Within a year, the once vibrant young woman had become frail and unrecognizable. Diagnosed with a terminal illness, she was abandoned by the gang and sent back to her hometown. Her fate remains unknown. Despite their initial success, the traffickers could not escape the consequences of their actions. Lam, Labang, and Vong Nia began experiencing haunting nightmares, tormented by visions of the women they had exploited. In July 1995, the nightmares intensified, leaving all 3 men deeply disturbed. Seeking relief, they consulted a spiritual healer, who advised them to travel abroad to escape their torment. Believing the advice, they flew to Thailand, only to find that their nightmares followed them. Soon after, Labang suffered a mental breakdown and was admitted to a psychiatric hospital in Taiwan. Lam and Vong Nia developed severe health conditions, eventually being diagnosed with terminal illnesses. Both men passed away in agony, far from the luxurious lives they once enjoyed. A lesson in morality. As the saying goes, those who commit evil may enjoy temporary gain, but their hearts will never be at peace. This story serves as a powerful reminder of the consequences of immoral actions. Exploitation and deceit may bring short-term rewards, but they lead to long-term suffering and regret. The story, The Compassion of the Golden Monkey. A 65-year-old monk once shared a story from his younger days. Long before he took his vows, he recounted, "In 1978, I lived in Tungfan County, Tushuyan Province, where I earned a living by growing medicinal herbs and hunting. One day, 3 of us went hunting together, armed with rifles and accompanied by our hunting dogs. We ventured deep into a forest. There, we spotted a troop of golden monkeys perched on the trees. Startled by our presence, the monkeys became frantic. However, with the hunting dogs stationed below, they had no way to escape. At one point, I saw a mother monkey carrying her baby on her back. As I aimed at the mother monkey, she gently placed her baby on a branch and made gestures that seemed to plead for its safety. That moment made me realize the value of maternal love, not just in humans but across all species. In that moment, I was deeply moved. Tears welled up in my eyes. From then on, I decided to give up hunting. That evening, while my companions prepared food from the day's hunt, I couldn't bring myself to eat. The image of the mother monkey stayed with me, haunting my thoughts. I was overcome with guilt, asking myself, why did I hunt? Why did I harm creatures that loved and protected their young, just like humans? How could I have been so heartless and selfish? The monk also shared the story of a friend who was an exceptional marksman. This friend often hunted birds, fish, and other animals without hesitation. He even used harmful methods, such as chemicals in water, to capture more fish easily. His actions caused significant harm to the environment and the creatures that lived in it. Years later, this friend became gravely ill. A tumor appeared on his body, and despite medical treatment, his condition worsened. Painful sores spread across his skin, and he endured immense suffering. Confined to his bed, he could hardly move. One stormy night, while wandering outside, he accidentally fell into a ditch and lost his life. Later, when his body was discovered, it was surrounded by wildlife, animals that he had once hunted. The monk concluded, from that day on, I vowed to give up hunting and pledged never to take another life. As he spoke, his face was etched with deep remorse. He continued, I hope that all hunters can one day put down their weapons and stop the cycle of harm. Animals, too, cherish life and fear death. They share the capacity to love, protect, and even sacrifice for their own. Just like humans, the consequences of taking lives may not be immediate, but when they arrive, they can be deeply frightening. Conclusions. These stories remind us that every action, no matter how big or small, carries consequences. By living with compassion, respecting all forms of life, and acting with integrity, we can create a ripple effect of positivity in the world. The lessons of karma teach us that kindness and mindfulness lead to true fulfillment. What choices will you make today to bring more kindness into the world? Thank you for watching. If you found this video meaningful, don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment with your thoughts. Be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you won't miss more inspiring stories like this. See you in the next video.